started as an ordinary morning. The sun rose golden over the horizon, and cities moved with their usual rhythm. Cars filled the roads, shopkeepers opened their doors, and children walked to school. Nothing felt unusual until the light began to fade. At first, people thought it was an eclipse. A strange shadow crossed the sky, dimming the sun. But the shadow grew larger. The light vanished too fast, too completely. Within minutes, the bright morning became as dark as late evening. Eyes turned upward. There, above the atmosphere, hung shapes. Immense, silent, endless. The arrival. Across the globe, from deserts to mountains, from villages to megacities. People looked up and froze. What they saw was not a cloud, not smoke, not a storm. They saw ships, alien ships, thousands of them, so large they covered the heavens like black scales of a monster. Each vessel was jagged, metallic, and glowing with strange blue energy. The sky was no longer human. It belonged to them. In Paris, tourists abandoned the Eiffel Tower and fled in panic. In Cairo, prayers rose from the streets. In New Delhi, traffic stopped completely as drivers stepped out of their cars to watch in silence. The world was staring at its own doom. The voice of conquest. Inside the flagship, Admiral Karvak stood tall in his command chamber. His body was covered in silver armor, and his eyes glowed faint red. Around him, dozens of alien officers saluted. He gazed down at Earth, his voice echoing through the ship. Another world, another conquest. They will kneel before the Empire or be erased. His soldiers cheered. They had done this countless times before. Dozens of planets had fallen. Civilizations stronger than Earth had been wiped out in days. To them, this was nothing but routine, a simple hunt. A signal pulsed outward. Every screen, every radio, every device on Earth went black. Then a single message, translated into all languages, boomed across the planet. People of Earth, the Imperial fleet claims your world. Surrender and kneel or face complete destruction. The voice was cold, merciless, confident. The fear below. In New York, people screamed as the words echoed from every screen. Mothers pulled children into basements. Fathers stood at windows, helpless. In Tokyo, entire trains stopped, passengers frozen in terror. In small villages, radios crackled with the same message, and farmers dropped their tools to stare at the sky. Humanity felt the same fear at once. This was the end. In military bases across the world, commanders exchanged frantic calls. Fighter jets scrambled. Missiles were armed. Submarines prepared to surface. Yet deep down, even the most hardened generals whispered the truth. Nothing on Earth could stand against ships that blotted out the sun. Arrogance above. Admiral Karvak smiled as his screens showed the fear below. Look at them, he said, raising one clawed hand. So weak, so small. They tremble before true power. One officer asked, "Do we destroy them now, Admiral?" Karvak shook his head slowly. No. First, let them see our strength. Let them understand that resistance is useless. Then they will kneel. At his signal, the first wave of warships broke formation. They turned their noses downward and began to descend through the atmosphere. Their engines roared, shaking the ground below. The invasion had begun. The world holds its breath. In London, crowds gathered near the Thames, pointing as dark triangles pierced the clouds. In Brazil, the Amazon canopy lit up with the glow of alien engines. In Johannesburg, families locked themselves in their homes, praying the monsters would pass them by. Everywhere, humanity waited. Some shouted. Some prayed. Some simply stood in shock. "Is this how it ends?" whispered an old woman in Rome as she clutched her rosary. Children cried in shelters. Sirens blared through cities. The world was not just frightened, it was paralyzed. The hidden silence. But not everyone panicked. Far below the surface, in hidden bunkers built beneath mountains and oceans, men and women sat before glowing screens. Their hands moved calmly across keyboards. Their eyes stayed steady, focused. Tracking complete. Power reserves stable. All systems ready. They were not afraid. They were waiting. For years, Earth had prepared in secret. While the world above thought only of wars among nations, a hidden alliance had been building something greater. Something no empire expected from a planet called primitive. But for now they stayed quiet, watching, waiting for the right moment, the order to fire. In orbit, Admiral Karvak lifted his hand. "Target their cities," he commanded. Energy beams lit up on the alien warships, glowing brighter and brighter, aimed at New York, Beijing, London, and Cairo. Each one was strong enough to reduce millions to ashes. On Earth, people clung to each other. Some screamed, some whispered prayers, some simply closed their eyes. The sky was black now, not with night, not with storm, but with ships that believed themselves invincible. Admiral Karvak's voice thundered. "Fire!" The moment before the storm. The ground shook as the alien weapons charged. Light spread across the dark sky, painting clouds in colors no human had ever seen. It was the moment the world thought it would die. But then, something shifted. In the silence of orbit, in the darkness behind the fleet, something stirred. A ripple of light, faint but sharp, cut through the black. On Earth, terrified eyes turned upward again. Not in despair this time, but in confusion. Something was moving up there. Something hidden. Something waiting. The invaders thought they had come to conquer. But they were about to discover the truth. This was Earth. And Earth was not prey. The silence after Admiral Karvak's order was short. Alien warships broke through the clouds in perfect formation, their black hulls glinting with blue fire. They moved like hunting beasts, lowering toward Earth's biggest cities. Every roar of their engines shook the ground below, making windows rattle and towers tremble. People screamed and scattered. But in the fleet's command halls, the aliens only smiled. "This will be quick," one officer said. "They are nothing but primitives," another sneered. Admiral Karvak nodded, his red eyes glowing with pride. "Destroy a few cities. Show them what happens when insects resist gods." Earth watches in terror. In New York, the first shadow fell over Manhattan. The alien ship was so huge it swallowed the skyline. Crowds tried to flee across bridges, but the streets were packed with panicked cars. Helicopters hovered helplessly, dwarfed by the massive invader above them. In Beijing, families rushed underground as sirens screamed. Soldiers filled the great square, staring up at the black monster sliding through the sky. In Cairo, the pyramids stood in the shadow of another alien vessel, its hull flashing with strange runes. Tourists and locals alike ran, but there was nowhere to hide. The world was frozen between fear and disbelief. The mocking voice, the alien commander's message returned, louder and more cruel than before. "Humans, do you understand now? Your weapons are toys. Your armies are insects. We are the Empire, and you are nothing." The voice shook every device again. Phones, radios, televisions, all carrying the same words, translated in every tongue. In the streets, people cried. Some knelt, begging gods for mercy. Others shouted in anger, fists raised at the sky. But anger without power was only despair. The aliens were certain of their victory, the human soldiers. But not everyone was helpless. In bunkers deep underground, soldiers prepared. Their uniforms bore no country's flag. They were not American, Russian, Chinese, or Indian. They were something greater, a united defense force created in secret for this day. Captain Reyes, a woman with sharp eyes and calm voice, stood at the center of one command room. "Do not engage yet," she ordered. Her officers nodded, though sweat ran down their foreheads. The alien ships were lowering, closer and closer, filling the radar screens like endless storms. "Wait for the signal," Reyes whispered. The world thought it was defenseless, but Earth had teeth hidden in the dark. The first strike attempt. Admiral Karvak raised his hand again. "Fire on New York," he commanded. The alien ship above Manhattan began to glow. Its belly opened, revealing a massive cannon. The weapon's light spread across the city like dawn. Crowds below screamed, holding each other, waiting for fire to erase them. The alien soldiers cheered. They could almost taste the smoke of burning cities. But then, the cannon stopped. The weapon, fully charged, flickered. Its energy collapsed back into itself with a hiss, like steam escaping. The ship shuddered, systems failing. Confusion spread among the aliens. What? Why won't it fire? An officer barked. Another shouted, power disruption. Something is interfering. The trap revealed. Far below, in a hidden bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Captain Reyes gave the order. Activate grid. Across the skies, invisible lines of energy came alive. Satellites humans had launched quietly over decades, disguised as weather probes, communication devices, scientific tools, suddenly revealed their true purpose. They linked into a network, forming a massive shield that cut through the alien fleet systems. Weapons refused to fire. Engines sputtered. The aliens had stepped into a trap. Alien arrogance breaks. On the flagship, Admiral Karvak slammed his claw against the console. Impossible! This world should not have such technology. His officers looked pale now, fear creeping into their proud faces. They had conquered hundreds of planets, but never had a prey shut down their weapons. Karvak growled. They have tricks, but tricks will not save them. Send more ships. Crush their defenses with sheer force. The humans strike back. Captain Reyes smiled coldly. They still think we're weak, she said. Then she gave the words that would change history. Release the lances. From hidden bases on Earth's surface, massive railguns rose out of mountains and deserts, each one charged with blinding energy. Then, like thunder, they fired. Streaks of light tore across the sky. One after another, alien warships exploded in balls of fire. Over New York, the giant vessel that had prepared to fire on the city split apart, raining debris into the river. Crowds gasped, first in fear, then in awe. For the first time, humanity struck back. The shock of the Empire. On the flagship, chaos erupted. Admiral, ship after ship is falling. Our defenses can't track their weapons. They are destroying us. Karvak's face twisted with rage and disbelief. How? They are primitives. His voice cut off as another explosion shook the fleet. Screens showed Earth's weapons punching holes straight through his armada. The arrogance in his chest curdled into something new. Fear. The people rise. On the ground, people who had been sobbing moments ago now shouted with joy. Crowds in New York watched alien fire rain into the sea. In Beijing, cheers rose from bunkers as alien ships fell smoking from the sky. In Cairo, soldiers pointed their rifles upward, not in despair but in triumph. Across the globe, the fear of humans turned into hope. The Empire had come to crush Earth in minutes. But now, in minutes, Earth was crushing them. The invasion that was supposed to be a simple hunt was turning into something far more dangerous. And Admiral Karvak was finally realizing, Earth was not a planet to conquer. Earth was a planet ready for war. The sky burned. Alien ships that once hovered like gods now twisted in flames, crashing into oceans and mountains. The Empire had come to conquer, but Earth had bitten back. Yet this was only the beginning. The battlefield above. In orbit, chaos spread across the Imperial fleet. Ships broke formation. Alarms blared in languages no human could understand. Officers shouted in panic. The proud Armada, once disciplined and perfect, now scattered like frightened birds. Admiral Karvak's voice roared through his command deck. Regain order. Close ranks. Crush their weapons. But his crew no longer carried the same arrogance. They had seen their mighty warships fall to pieces from weapons they did not expect. Fear crept into their eyes. One officer whispered, trembling, "They are not primitive. They are predators." On the ground. In New York, crowds who once cried now stood frozen, staring at the impossible. They watched pieces of alien metal rain into the Hudson River. The sky that moments ago felt like a tomb now lit up with fire, and it was the enemy that burned. A boy on a rooftop cheered, raising his fists. His mother pulled him close, tears on her face. Not of fear, but of relief. In Beijing, Soldiers shouted as alien wreckage fell into empty fields. In Cairo, people climbed onto roofs to watch the heavens fight. Across the world, humanity realized one truth. They were not helpless. The hidden command. Far beneath the Rocky Mountains, Captain Reyes stood at the center of Earth's Defense Command. Around her, officers worked with deadly focus. Targets locked. Satellite grid stable. Railguns ready for recharge. Reyes's voice was cold and steady. Fire again. Do not give them time to breathe. Another volley of Earth's secret weapons streaked upward, tearing into the alien fleet. More ships exploded. More fire rained down. The humans had revealed only a fraction of their power, but it was enough to turn fear into fury. Admiral Carvok's rage. On the flagship, Admiral Carvok's claws dug into his throne. The chamber shook as another explosion rocked the fleet. He snarled at his officers. How dare they? How dare these insects wound the Empire? But even as he shouted, the truth grew harder to deny. His greatest warships were falling, one after another, to a planet that should not have stood a chance. Admiral, an officer stammered, we must retreat. If we stay, Carvok's eyes glowed red. Retreat? Never. I will turn this world into ashes. Prepare the dread fire cannons. The officer swallowed hard. Obedience fought with fear, but orders were orders. The dread fire cannons. The fleet's largest ships began to shift. Their lower hulls opened, revealing colossal weapons never before seen on Earth. Cannons larger than skyscrapers glowed with energy, brighter and brighter, until the clouds themselves boiled away. Below, people shielded their eyes as the sky lit with unnatural fire. It's the end again, whispered a priest in Rome. No, said a soldier nearby. It's only the beginning, the human answer. In the bunkers, Captain Reyes watched the glowing cannons form. Her face did not move, but her eyes sharpened. They want to show us their teeth, she said quietly. Then let's break them. Orders, Captain? Release the storm. The storm unleashed. Across the globe, hidden silos opened. What looked like harmless mountains split apart to reveal missile banks. Oceans rippled as submarines surfaced, their decks alive with strange new weapons. Then the world roared. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of missiles shot into the sky. They moved not like ordinary weapons but like hunters, guided by AI, fast as lightning, weaving through space like living creatures. The alien dreadfire cannons never fired. The missiles struck first. One by one, the colossal cannons exploded before they could unleash their fury. Fire consumed the largest ships of the fleet. The sky turned into a battlefield of thunder. The Empire shatters. Alien soldiers screamed on their burning decks. Pride turned to horror. They had believed humans were weak, but their cannons had been silenced before even one shot. Admiral Carvok slammed his fist. No, impossible. But deep in his heart he knew. This was not a battle of gods and insects. This was a battle of equals, no worse. A battle the Empire was losing. The human spirit. On the ground, cheers erupted. In New York, people who had been ready to die now hugged strangers, shouting with joy. In Moscow, soldiers fired rifles into the sky, not in despair but in triumph. In villages and towns, in deserts and jungles, humans raised their heads proudly. For the first time, the galaxy's mightiest fleet bled before them. And they were not done yet. The turning point, as the wreckage of alien ships rained down, Captain Reyes spoke into her headset. Her voice carried across the hidden network of Earth's defenders. They came to destroy us in minutes. But now, in minutes, we destroy them. Her officers nodded, determination burning in their eyes. The first strike was complete. The war was no longer one-sided. Now the Empire would learn the cost of underestimating humanity. The sky was still burning. Wreckage of alien ships fell through the atmosphere, crashing into seas and deserts. The Empire had come with arrogance, but now their fleet was bleeding. For the first time in centuries, the so-called gods of conquest tasted fear. But what the aliens didn't know was this: Earth had not even shown its real weapon yet. The calm before the reveal. Inside the underground bunker, Captain Reyes stood still as the room buzzed with activity. Officers shouted updates, screens flashed with data, but she remained calm. "Damage report?" she asked. "Minimal," an officer replied. "Our grid is stable. Railguns recharging. Missiles standing by." Reyes nodded, but she knew something the others didn't. The railguns and missiles were not Earth's true strength. They were only the opening moves. Far above them, satellites were aligning, quietly preparing for something the Empire had never seen. The fleet in panic. On the flagship, Admiral Carvac struggled to hide his rage. His voice thundered across the command deck. "Hold the line. Regain control. They cannot defeat us." But his words carried no weight now. His officers no longer looked proud. Their screens showed chaos. Ships destroyed, communications broken, formations shattered. One officer whispered, "Admiral, we underestimated them." Carvac's red eyes flared. "Silence. They are humans. Primitive. They cannot." Another explosion rocked the fleet, cutting him off. Even the Empire's proud commander could no longer deny the truth. The signal. Back on Earth, Captain Reyes lifted a small black device from the console. She pressed a button. A coded signal pulsed silently through the skies. The officer beside her looked confused. "Ma'am, what did you just activate?" Reyes's voice was calm. "The real weapon. Watch. The awakening." In orbit, satellites that had floated quietly for decades suddenly came alive. To the world, they had always seemed like weather stations or communication devices. But their true purpose was far more deadly. Panels unfolded. Antennas rotated. Hidden weapons powered up, glowing like stars. There were hundreds of them. Together, they formed a web around Earth, a vast and invisible shield. But it wasn't just defense. These satellites were armed with beams of energy that could cut through the thickest armor. Humanity had built them in silence, hidden from its own people, waiting for the day someone would try to conquer Earth. That day had come. The first beam. Above the Atlantic Ocean, one of the satellites fired. A beam of pure light shot across space, slicing straight through an alien battleship. The vessel didn't explode. It split cleanly in half, its two pieces drifting apart before bursting into flames. On the ground, people gasped. They had never seen such power. In Paris, crowds stared upward as the night sky lit with burning wreckage. In Tokyo, children pointed from rooftops as the alien ship dissolved into ash. The impossible was happening again. Humans were not just surviving. They were winning. The Empire trembles. Admiral Carvac's officers screamed in terror. "Admiral, unknown weapons are firing from orbit. We can't block them. We can't stop them." Carvac's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. His pride shattered as screen after screen showed his fleet being torn apart by invisible lances of light. "No," he growled. "This world cannot have this power. They are not ready. They cannot be ready." But the evidence was in front of him. Humanity had hidden its strength well. Too well. The people's hope. On Earth, the crowds who had been praying for survival now shouted with pride. In New York, people filled the streets, pointing at the burning sky. "They're falling," someone shouted. "They're losing," another cried. In Moscow, soldiers who had once feared alien fire now laughed and clapped each other on the back. In Cairo, a young boy whispered to his mother, "We're not weak, are we?" She hugged him tightly, tears in her eyes. "No. We never were." The secret revealed. Back in the bunker, Captain Reyes watched the sky map on her screen. Red dots, the alien ships, were disappearing one by one. Green markers, the satellites, were striking with deadly precision. One officer whispered in awe, We've been hiding this all along?" Reyes finally smiled. "The galaxy thought we were prey, but Earth was always preparing, always ready." The breaking point. Admiral Carvac slammed his fist again, but this time it was not in rage. It was in desperation. "Pull the fleet back. Regroup," he ordered. But it was too late. More beams cut through his ships, reducing them to drifting wreckage. His proud armada was dying before his eyes. For the first time in his life, Karvok felt something he never thought possible: defeat. The world unites. As the battle raged above, humans across the planet began to see themselves differently. For centuries, nations had fought each other. But in this moment, they were united not by governments, not by borders, but by survival. And in their unity, they discovered power greater than any empire. The end of arrogance. The Empire had arrived to show Earth its weakness. But now the galaxy's conquerors were being humiliated, burned in the very skies they thought they controlled. Admiral Karvok stared at Earth one last time, his voice bitter. This world is cursed. But for the people below, it was not a curse. It was a promise. Earth was not just defending itself. It was proving to the galaxy that humanity was a force no empire should ever underestimate. The sky had become a graveyard, where once thousands of alien warships floated in perfect formation. Now wreckage drifted, burning as it fell through Earth's atmosphere. Oceans swallowed twisted metal. Forests shook as fragments rained down like meteors. The Empire's proud armada, once unstoppable, was breaking apart. The panic in orbit. Inside the flagship, Admiral Karvok clutched his throne with trembling claws. His officers ran from station to station, voices shrill with panic. Shields collapsing. Engines offline on half the fleet. Casualty reports incoming. Hundreds of ships lost. The mighty commander's voice cracked as he roared, "Hold formation! They cannot defeat us." But his words no longer inspired confidence. His soldiers had seen the truth with their own eyes. The invincible empire was being torn apart by a planet they thought primitive. On the ground, in New York, people filled the streets despite the danger. They pointed upward, shouting, cheering, as alien vessels burned above the skyline. "Look, they're falling!" a boy cried, his voice echoing through Times Square. In Beijing, crowds emerged from underground shelters, raising their fists at the sky. Soldiers fired their rifles into the air, not in despair this time, but in victory. In Cairo, as wreckage lit the desert night, families gathered together and whispered, "We are alive. We are fighting back." Humanity, once paralyzed by fear, now stood united in defiance. The satellite storm. Captain Reyes stood inside the mountain bunker, her face cold and sharp as steel. "Status of the grid?" she asked. "All satellites operational. Beams at 92% capacity," an officer reported. "Good," Reyes said. "Don't stop. Burn them until nothing is left." Outside, the orbital satellites fired again. Their beams sliced across the heavens, cutting through alien battleships as if they were made of paper. One by one, colossal motherships exploded into fiery blossoms. The sky flashed like lightning storms, each blast brighter than the last. The Empire had brought thousands of ships. Now hundreds were already gone. The desperate counterattack. On the flagship, Karvok's fangs bared. "Turn our cannons on their satellites," he barked. Dozens of alien vessels turned upward, firing beams into orbit. Explosions lit the skies as some satellites were destroyed. For a moment, the aliens felt hope. But Earth's hidden defenses had more layers. As satellites fell, others activated. More weapons came online, hidden in the dark. The shield around Earth was vast, deeper than the Empire had ever imagined. Karvok's hope died as quickly as it came. The human counterpunch. Back in the bunker, Reyes gave the next order. "Deploy the Falcons." From hidden bases across the world, Earth's advanced fighter craft launched. Unlike ordinary jets, these ships moved with speed and agility that matched alien technology. Sleek, silent, armed with plasma cannons and railguns, they rose into the skies like a swarm of steel hawks. The aliens were stunned. They had expected slow, fragile aircraft. Instead, Earth's Falcons cut through their smaller ships like blades. Within minutes, the Empire's scouts and interceptors were nothing but ashes in the clouds. The fall of giants. The largest of the alien motherships, the size of floating cities, turned their weapons on Earth one last time. Energy beams lit across their hulls, preparing to fire. The ground below trembled as their cannons glowed brighter. But Earth struck first. Railguns hidden in deserts fired. Submarines rose from oceans, unleashing missiles that streaked upward. Satellites focused their beams in unison. Together, the storm of weapons struck the motherships. The giants cracked apart. Fire ripped through their hulls. One by one, they collapsed, falling toward Earth like dying stars. Crowds below gasped at the sight of entire motherships crashing into the seas, sending waves taller than buildings. The gods of conquest were falling like stones. The empire breaks. On the flagship, silence filled the command deck. The officers no longer shouted. They only stared at the disaster around them. "Admiral," one whispered, "we've lost everything." Karvak's eyes burned with fury. "No, the Empire never loses." But his words felt empty. He could see the truth on every screen. The armada he had commanded with pride was gone, burning in the skies of Earth. The people's cry. On the ground, the world erupted in a sound that no empire could silence. The roar of billions of voices shouting as one. From America to Africa, from Asia to Europe, from islands to deserts. People cheered, sang, and cried with joy. The planet itself seemed alive, unified in defiance. For the first time in history, humanity was not divided by borders. They were one people standing against one enemy. The final blow of the day. Captain Reyes leaned forward, her voice calm but deadly. "Target the flagship," she said. Her officers looked at her in shock. "The flagship? Admiral Karvak himself is aboard." "Exactly," Reyes replied. "Cut off the head, and the serpent dies." The satellites locked on. Railguns charged. Missiles prepared. The Empire's greatest ship loomed above, still proud, still glowing with menace. But soon, even the flagship would learn. Earth was no one's prey. The Empire's fleet was dying. What had once been a sea of thousands of warships was now only scattered fragments burning across the night sky. Oceans boiled as wreckage fell. Mountains shook as metal giants crashed to the ground. The proud armada, feared across 100 worlds, was no longer an army. It was a ruin, the flagship alone. High above Earth, the flagship of Admiral Karvak still floated. Its hull was scarred and cracked, its engines sputtering. Once it had been the pride of the Empire, now it drifted, surrounded by the burning remains of its fleet. Inside, silence filled the command deck. The officers who once laughed at the weakness of humans now stared in horror at the screens. They saw nothing but loss. Karvak stood at the center, his claws trembling on the armrest of his throne. His red eyes burned with rage and fear. "They cannot defeat us," he whispered. But no one believed him anymore. On Earth, the hunt continues. In the mountain bunker, Captain Reyes watched her screens with calm eyes. "Most of the fleet is gone," an officer reported. "Only the flagship remains." Reyes nodded. "Then let's finish this." Her voice carried across the defense network. Orders flew from bunkers to silos, from satellites to submarines. Weapons recharged, railguns locked, beams aligned. The entire planet focused on one target, the Empire's last and greatest ship. The people watch. On the ground, humanity held its breath. In London, families stood on rooftops, staring at the sky where the flagship glowed like a wounded beast. In New York, crowds filled the streets, chanting together, "End it! End it!" In Beijing, soldiers shouted as missiles rolled into place. In Cairo, a priest raised his hands, whispering, "Let justice fall." Billions of humans were watching, waiting for the moment when the invader would fall. The first hit. From orbit, one of Earth's satellites fired. A beam of white light cut through the flagship's side, tearing open a massive wound. Fire burst from the wound as pieces of metal spun into the void. Inside, alarms blared. Officers screamed. Panels sparked and exploded. Karvak roared, "Return fire! Defend the ship!" But no weapons answered. The systems were broken, the cannons dead. The Empire's greatest warship was helpless. The plea begins. For a long moment, Admiral Karvak stood silent. His chest heaved. Pride and fury battled inside him. But at last his pride cracked. "Open the channel," he ordered. His officers stared at him in shock. "Admiral, a surrender?" His claws tightened. His voice shook with rage and shame. "Open it." The channel connected. Across Earth's skies, his voice thundered once more. But this time, it was different. "Humans," Karvok said. His tone no longer arrogant, but desperate. "Enough. You have made your point. The Empire sees your strength. Spare us, and we will leave your world." The silence of Earth. For a moment, Earth was quiet. The same voice that once promised their destruction was now begging for mercy. The same admiral who mocked them as insects was now bowing to survive. In New York, people stared at the giant screens. In Beijing, soldiers froze mid-step. In Cairo, prayers stopped mid-word. Across the globe, billions of humans held their breath. The invincible conquerors were begging. Captain Reyes responds. Inside the bunker, Captain Reyes leaned toward her console. Her officers looked at her, waiting for her words. She spoke calmly, her voice carrying across the skies. "You came here to enslave us. You came here to burn our cities and kill our people. And now, when your fleet is broken, you ask for mercy." Her words echoed into the command deck of the flagship. Karvok's face twisted with shame. "You do not understand," he growled. "The Empire is eternal. If you kill us, others will come. Spare us, and you will have peace." Reyes's voice was cold. "Peace was never yours to offer. You brought war, and now you will taste it. The people decide." Across Earth, the people did not wait for leaders. Their voices rose as one, carried across radios, screens, and streets. "No mercy," they shouted. "Finish it. End them." Billions of voices roared in unison. A cry louder than any fleet. A verdict that shook even the strongest heart. Humanity would not forgive. The desperation of a tyrant. On the flagship, Karvok fell to his knees. He had never bowed in his life. But now he begged. "Please," he whispered, "do not kill us. I will give you knowledge, weapons, secrets of the Empire. Just let us live." But no answer came. Only the sound of Earth's weapons charging. The end approaches. In the bunker, Captain Reyes raised her hand. "Fire," she said. And with that single word, Earth prepared to erase the last shadow of the Empire's fleet. The flagship trembled. Admiral Karvok knelt on the cracked floor of his command deck. His once proud armor scorched and broken. Around him, officers screamed, consoles sparked, and smoke filled the air. His empire's greatest warship was dying. Outside, Earth's weapons glowed, charging for the final strike. The last chance. Karvok lifted his head, his voice broken. "Humans, hear me. If you destroy us, the Empire will send more. They will come with vengeance. Spare us now, and I will speak for you. I will tell them you are too strong. I will save your world from endless war." His voice echoed across the skies. Billions of humans heard his plea. The invader who once promised to burn their planet now begged like a prisoner at the gates. But Earth was silent. The verdict of humanity. In New York, crowds looked at the burning ship above them. In Beijing, soldiers stared at the giant screens. In Cairo, priests and imams, monks and rabbis, all lifted their heads in the same silence. For a long moment, the world simply listened. Then, the voices rose. "No mercy. End it. Never again." It wasn't a government's decision. It wasn't one leader's command. It was humanity itself speaking as one. The cry of billions carried across the planet. The Empire would not leave in peace. This time, Earth would write the ending. The order. In the bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Captain Reyes stood calm, her hand raised. Her officers watched her, their faces pale but determined. She gave the order with a single word. Fire. The end of the flagship. In orbit, the satellites aligned. Railguns thundered. Missiles streaked upward. Together, Earth's weapons struck the flagship. Beams tore through its armor, ripping it apart from bow to stern. Explosions burst across its hull like chains of fire. The great ship, once feared across the galaxy, cracked open. Flames consumed its core. Admiral Karvok fell back into his throne, eyes wide, as the world outside his window turned to white fire. "No," he whispered. "Not by humans." And then the flagship exploded, scattering across the heavens in a storm of burning debris. The Empire's last shadow was gone. The roar of earth. On the ground, the world erupted. In London, church bells rang by themselves as people screamed with joy. In New York, strangers hugged and cried together in the streets. In Cairo, soldiers fell to their knees, not in surrender, but in victory. In Tokyo, children pointed upward, shouting, "We won! We won!" From villages and deserts, from frozen poles to crowded cities, humanity roared as one. The invaders had fallen. Earth was free. The galaxy watches. Far beyond Earth, in hidden colonies and conquered worlds, news traveled fast. Survivors of the fleet sent messages before they died. Whispers spread across the stars. The Empire was defeated. The humans destroyed them. Earth crushed the unstoppable fleet in minutes. On distant planets, slaves raised their heads in hope. Conquered species whispered prayers with new names, humans. And on the thrones of the Empire, rulers trembled. For the first time in memory, their power had been challenged. And broken. The lesson spoken. In the bunker, Captain Reyes stood before her officers. The screens showed the battlefield above Earth. Silent now, empty except for drifting wreckage. She spoke softly, but her words carried weight heavier than any weapon. They thought we were weak. They thought we would kneel. But today we taught them a lesson. Earth is not prey. Earth does not bow. Her officers nodded. None smiled. None celebrated. They only stood in solemn silence, knowing what they had done would echo across the galaxy. The dawn after the fire. As morning rose over the planet, the fires in the sky faded. The black clouds of war drifted away, replaced by the golden light of the sun. Children stepped out from shelters, blinking in wonder at the clear horizon. Farmers returned to their fields. Teachers rang school bells again. Life returned, fragile but unbroken. Humanity had faced extinction and answered with defiance. The final warning. That night, across the stars, a message left Earth. Sent through the same channels the Empire once used, it carried in every tongue on every frequency, for all the galaxy to hear. This is Earth. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek war. But if you come to enslave us, if you come to burn our world, know this, we will break you. We are humanity. Remember our name. The end and the beginning. The galaxy had changed forever. Empires would whisper. Conquerors would hesitate. And oppressed worlds would dream of freedom. The humans stood beneath their skies, scarred but unbroken. They were no longer seen as weak, no longer prey. Earth had spoken its first word to the stars. And it was a roar.